expectations. Like so many people are just silently have their standards or their whatever, and they don't share them with anybody, but they expect that everybody should just know them. You need to have and maintain good communication skills, both personally and professionally. Like, are you properly communicating with others? Now, this comes in the form of communicating standards, communicating with your rules of engagement, which we talked about in the last video about being assertive and having that confidence. But when it comes to your communication skills, like, if you're not properly communicating with others, whether in your professional or your personal life, then you literally can't get upset when things aren't going your way. Like, if you haven't properly communicated these things to people, then how is it that you are developing these expectations? Like, so many people are just silently have their standards or their whatever, and they don't share them with anybody, but they expect that everybody should just know them. Everybody is unique in their approach, in their expectations, in their standards, their values, their principles. Everybody is unique. So, like, if you're not properly communicating with people, you can't have that unreasonable expectation that others just know what you're thinking, what you're feeling, you know what I mean, what your standards are. You need to properly communicate with people. Communication is key, in both professionally and personally. So in your personal life, you know what I mean, you need to be adequately communicating, especially with your loved ones and your friends. Like, you need to be communicating with them. And, like, you know what I mean, so many men are so closed off and not sharing how they feel or you know what I mean, letting their opinion on a certain situation be known just out of some passive aggressive bullshit. Like, you need to actually be able to communicate. And then in the other realm, because we're talking about communication as a whole. Sorry, I keep kicking the camera. So, like, there's communication in that realm of communicating, you know what I mean, of your feelings, your standards, principles, so on and so forth, both personally and professionally. But it also comes down to your communication skills as a whole. Like, how do you communicate? Like, can you adjust the way that you articulate and communicate for your specific audience? Like, that's always been one powerful skill of mine, is like, I could talk to a homeless guy in the street. I could talk to a very busy executive or a lawyer or whatever, and I can adjust my communication and my articulation patterns to fit that individual. And I think that a lot of people are really struggling with this. They don't know how to adjust their communication with their audience. Like, you need to know who you're addressing and be communicating adequately for that person. Like, you know what I mean? If you're one of those pretentious people who just likes to use a lot of big words and everything around people who aren't necessarily going to understand, you know what I mean, what you're saying, because their vocabulary just isn't necessarily what yours is, then that's just ignorant. Like, you need to learn to adjust yourself for your audience. And, like, that's a key communication skill. Also, you need to be able to change how it is that you communicate with people specifically. Like, how you communicate with your children versus how you communicate with a coworker or an employee, or how you communicate with a subordinate, period. Like, somebody that, you know what I mean, that you're overseeing should be very different from how you communicate with your child or with your wife or with your mother or with your grandmother. Like, you need to be able to adjust how it is that you communicate relative to who it is that you're communicating with. And, like, that's a skill set I think that a lot of people are struggling with. So, like, you know what I mean? But it comes from, like, once you really know yourself, which, like, I find a lot of people just don't, and it's a fucking shame. Like, one of the greatest feats that you will ever accomplish in life is, like, getting to know yourself. And it's a constant evolution. Like, if you're actually growing, that goal post is always moving. The furtherance of knowing yourself is a continuous thing. But you should always be furthering getting to know yourself. You should always, you know what I mean, have a good understanding of who you are, at least in the realm of your principles, of your standards, of your values, because once you have those, it's very easy to adjust your communication with specific people. I have a client who I did a program with all about, what do we call that? I did a program with her all about basically communication and, like, identity. But it was like the program, we called it self-expression. And it was basically just how, you know what I mean, how she formulated her identity, who she was, and then how she communicated that to the world. Like how you take up a room, the space, you know what I mean, the space that you occupy when you walk into a room, the types of how you communicate with others and how you expect them to communicate with you. So, but it really, you know what I mean, it really ended up boiling down to just being an identity thing. Like, you know what I mean, especially in business, a lot of us have formulated, you know what I mean, a lot, like what I call a chameleon skin. So we, you know what I mean, we have all different faces, like we have a lot of different masks and hats that we wear that change and adjust, you know what I mean, relative to who we're communicating with. But it all just, you know what I mean, it all boils down to, as long as you know who you are and you're solidified in your identity and you're comfortable and confident with who you are, then it's nothing to wear those different masks and to be a chameleon, especially in business, like, and doing the interchangeables when it comes to business to personal, like how I have a business discussion with somebody, especially like a subordinate. And for anybody that doesn't know what subordinate means, like it just means somebody under you, like somebody that you are overseeing or delegating stuff to, somebody that you're responsible for, particularly like in business or like a team. You know what I mean? Like, so how I'm going to discuss things with somebody like that versus how I'm going to go and talk to my grandmother or talk to my son is going to be very different. But as long as you have a solidified identity, you know what I mean, it's very easy to be interchangeable with your communication skills when it comes to who it is that you're addressing. So that's really like what I wanted to touch home about with this video, is communication skills. Like, and it all, like, I find it all boiled, like almost everything I talk about boils down to identity. Like, if you could just simply take the time to do the deep introspective work and learn who you are and learn how you want to be, how you want others to treat you and engage with you, what your standards are, what your values are, what your principles are, then these things start to naturally assemble around that. It really boils down to identity. Like, I find it's such a common theme in my coaching and with the people that I interact with, is like, I find any shortcomings that they're dealing with or things that they're having trouble instituting almost always boils down to identity. So like, take some time, get to know yourself. Like, for the love of God, get to know yourself. Like, it's going to change so many things that you can't even account for in the moment. Because like, once you know yourself, you can adjust yourself and adequately communicate with people, and especially, you know what I mean, the interchangeable communications and adjusting that level of communication and how you communicate with certain people. Get to know yourself, be conscious of how it is that you communicate, and be able to make those adjustments in your communications with others. Now let's grow together.